Four, three, two, one.
Welcome to Uncommon Ground with Mike Davis.
And Hunter Conrad.
And Blake Blevins.
All right, we have all kinds of guests today. Troy is at a high school reunion. I think it's his 50th high school reunion because he's much, much older than he looks. Pete Melfi is doing the St. Augustine High football game on the 904 after we're done. So if you want to watch a really good football game, the high school's playing, and Pete's got that. And if you go to the game or you drive by, you're going to see this giant white 904 truck that Blake, are you sad the 904 truck is not the number 11 anymore?
Yes, I am still sad.
It's still sad. You wanted that for your own number 11 one day, didn't you?
Yes.
All right. So somehow Pete hornswoggled it away from your dad. It's kind of like losing the Millennium Falcon, isn't it?
Yeah,
Kind of like that.
Kind of.
It's kind of like losing the Millennium Falcon out of the Blevins family. All right. So Hunter Conrad's with us today. He's our county administrator. And if you guys have questions for Hunter, text, write them in the link, and then I'll try to get to as many of them as I can. We've got some stuff we're going to do. Hopefully I won't miss some good ones. Also, download the 904 Now app. Hit the share button on it or when you're watching us so we can get some more people. And also, go watch us on full screen. That helps us out a little bit as well with likes and things. All right, to get it started before we get to Hunter, we got to pay some bills. And one of the bills we love helping to get paid is 123 Burger House. They're locally owned and operated by the Tringali family. They have been voted the best burger in St. Augustine for 3 years in a row. They have burgers, chicken wings, salads, and they got the salt runner, which is the mahi. They got a sandwich, which is barbecue. They've got a great menu. They've got authentic wood-fired pizza and ice cream. They offer dine-in, takeout, and delivery through Bite Squad and Grubhub. The Tringali family and all of their staff would like to thank you for your business during these unusual times. I'm telling you what, it is one of the best burgers in town. Pete used to not be a big fan of anything other than McDonald's, and now he won't go back anywhere. It's 123 Burger or else. So if you get a chance, go visit them. And I'll also tell you, it's Friday night. Carmela's Pizza, their sister store, is absolutely awesome. It's the best pizza in town. All right, Hunter, welcome to the show. Sorry for the long intro. Normally I have Troy to bounce all of that stuff off of. You've been on the job for a year.
Close to it. 10 months.
10 months.
Yes, sir.
How many years does 10 months feel like this year?
10 years.
10 years. So if you go to HR and you say, I've been on the job 10 months and it's 2020, what have I accrued? Do you get extra time for making it through this year?
Unfortunately not. No, I'm lucky to have made it 10 months.
So let's kind of do some updates. Commissioner Waldron.
Yes.
How is he doing?
He's doing very well. I spoke with him today. He is hopeful to be released from the rehab hospital that he's in this weekend. Mm-hmm. So we'll see what happens with that. All that's depending on some stuff they're got to take care of personally. But from there, he'll be returning home and doing some private rehab in his home. And hopefully you'll see him in person pretty soon. Good. So he's working really hard. He's doing well. He's progressing substantially. And we'll just continue to pray for him and Stephanie and the girls and the family. He is literally, and he knows this, and he would say it if he were here with you guys today, a walking miracle from God.
Oh, yeah, he is. We have talked about this. When his daughter put out on Facebook that they needed prayers, and we were able to get that right before we went on the air one day. And I know all of our listeners have been great about that as well and supporting him and praying for him. He was in bad shape. And the fact that he's where he is today, I firmly believe is the power of prayer and how many people love him and care about him. Troy and I have said repeatedly, he is one of the nicest guys.
Absolutely.
You will ever meet, and he just happens to be in politics where it's hard to find nice guys.
That's exactly
he's just a great person. So, keep him in your thoughts and prayers. He still has a ways to go in recovery, but it'd be great to have him in person. When what's the schedule for county commission meetings?
So we're still on in a local state of emergency. So by Florida statute, when you're in a local state of emergency, you got to continue that state of emergency until you let it expire. Weekly meetings. So we're still having weekly meetings, but the current normally scheduled meetings are every 2 weeks like usual. And then there's a meeting in between to continue the local state of emergency until the following week. So meeting every Tuesday right now.
And you are live meetings every Tuesday?
We are.
Okay.
Yes,
so you've been doing live, and all the other meetings, the planning and zoning meetings and all of that are they back to all live meetings?
I think they're in the process of getting back to it.
Okay.
The commission meetings themselves never went from being live. So we've been live the entire time.
But you restricted access to those meetings, or just kind of a limited seating?
Early on, we did limited seating so that people were able to social distance. We still have some of those measures in place. Obviously, we have not packed out the auditorium for any issues as of this moment. So it's open and live and available for people to come to and have their voices heard.
Okay. And I'm on a city board. We just went to a live meeting this month. And it's so much nicer to be live than be Zooming. We had an 8-hour Zoom meeting one time. And it's just hard. It's very difficult to get everybody the opportunity to be heard, to see what's going on. You're limited to whatever's on the screen. And it's a little tougher than doing a live.
It's hard to keep people's attention as well.
Yeah.
You know, if you've got 15 people on a screen looking at each other, it's a lot different than me, you, and Blake being here in the studio sitting and talking with each other, or 5 commissioners at the dais with people in the auditorium.
Yeah.
So it's just difficult. But
Yeah.
we're thankful for the technology, but it changes the way it's done.
It is, and it's kind of been interesting. A lot of people have done really well with that technology. I
Mhm.
mean, I know in our industry, we've been able to do a bunch of meetings. I'm on a bunch of different charity boards. It's kept all of that going. I think the one type of organization that's done the best is churches.
Yeah.
I mean, churches on Zoom meetings have been able to keep people in touch and in touch with their church community. And we've never had that before. I mean, we've never been through a pandemic like this before, but we've never had the ability to kind of get that message out. I mean, there's certain stations would have, have these big, huge churches that would have their own kind of TV station in the morning and great production quality, but you couldn't do it if you were a smaller church. Now, I mean, you could sit there in the morning and go to 3 or 4 different churches and listen to different pastors on Sunday morning. And if you miss it, you can go catch YouTube the next day and catch up on it. I mean, it's really kind of, it's neat. So
It's been great.
all right, so we do have a question from Josh. Joshua, who's out there. Halloween.
Mhm.
Is there a stance from the county? Is it on, off? What's the recommendation?
No stance from the county on that. People are free to do what they will in their private communities. County's not taking a position on restricting anything from private homeowners and residents who celebrate Halloween.
All right, Blake, what are we going as this year?
Not sure yet.
I think we got to go. What do you think?
We'll see.
We can always have Troy go as our sidekick, right? So he's already dressed for it. If we just go with Troy's the sidekick, you and I are the only ones to come up with a costume, right?
Yeah, we'll see.
The easiest.
You asked Blake. So what are you going as?
Well, the easiest one for me, and if Troy was here, he'd already say it. I can just go as Jake from State Farm. I have like 20 pairs of khakis. I can find a red shirt. I can just go as Jake from State Farm. So the problem is I'm probably getting a bunch of people that ask me insurance questions as they're out there trying to get candy. And, talking insurance is not always the best thing. But, yeah, so I would try to avoid that. So another question that came up with one of our listeners when I told him you were going to be on this week was a 312 extension.
Yes.
So what's up with a 312 extension?
Obviously, multi-year project. The first segment of 312.
Like in our lifetime multi-year project?
In our lifetime.
Okay, all
multi-year.
right, that's
but
good.
in all fairness, now that I've experienced 10 months, there you go, 10 years of county government and working with state agencies, and I know people are working hard, and there's so many processes and procedures to go through. These things obviously get delayed over time. There's just so much to do with them. As you know, the permitting process and procedure, and you talk about acquisitions and right-of-way and easements. But all that being said, the first mile, which is from 207 and 312 that will attach to Holmes Boulevard, is set for construction tentatively in the summer of 2022. So we'll get that first mile done. There's some other improvements going on, some easements that are being acquired to build that. That'll be a 2-lane road to begin with, from 312, the new 313, up to Holmes Boulevard. And as some of the listeners may know, that will eventually extend to north of the airport on US 1, but that's going to be a multi-year project. And that's a state road, so there's a lot involved with Florida Department of Transportation.
Well, you got to get in the system, and then you got to buy the land, and then they got to have the money to build the road.
That's
and
right.
So there's a lot to that. We've talked a lot on this show, and I've talked to different friends over the years. When we 4-lane 207, so as a kid growing up here, it was a 2-lane road to Palatka. And it was a rather dangerous road. It was really dangerous at night and a lot of accidents along the way. So when they 4-laned it, became much safer. The part of it that was really dangerous was right there in front of St. Joe. Right, so you came off of US 1. You had kids coming in and out of school twice a day. It was a 2-lane road. There was a lot of traffic on it. Now that segment from US 1 to 312 is probably the least used 4-lane road in the county.
Right.
I mean, there's just not that much traffic on it compared to what it was before that extension went
And when
through.
you say from US 1 to 312, you're talking about on 207.
On
from that
207.
space.
Yeah,
That's
it's
right.
it's just right there on 207. You drive that where you feel like you're by yourself.
Yep.
It's like, what happened to everybody? Because they all turn on 312. And
Where the development goes is where everybody goes.
it's just, and I've had the opportunity to go to Palatka like 7 a.m. a couple weeks ago. The volume of traffic coming out of Putnam County into St. Johns County that rides down that road, hits that 312, and then goes either across the bridge or somewhere else on you. It's incredible, that volume in the morning.
Well, hopefully it will be just like the other main corridors. It'll be an opportunity to get some of those people off of US 1, off of 95, give people an alternative route around, so they're not coming straight up US 1 through that 312 area.
Yeah, because it's really it's kind of interesting to watch that. And there was when we were down at the other studio, I would always run the back road from my office on Lewis Speedway, South Dixie and Old Moultrie, and you run up that way. They were the city was doing some work on South Dixie, and everybody had to push to Holmes Boulevard to make that loop. And you're just like, oh my gosh, this is really bad. This is tough. And that used to be, and especially that segment that was the old dirt road, right behind Murray Middle School. That was like the secret.
It's not
the
a secret
trail. And then then all of a sudden you'd see more and more people riding the dirt road, and the county said, okay, we'll pave the road and we'll make it a 4-lane road, and or a 2-lane road. It's like, this is really good, but it's not a secret anymore. I mean, it is a heavily traveled. So if you have any other questions for Hunter, let us know. We're going to do a bunch of county stuff. We're also going to go through some national political stuff, get Hunter's opinions on things. It's nice to be able to talk to somebody that's intelligent today. And so I'm really looking forward to that discussion. So 312 extension, what are you getting? I know you guys are back in budget. So you're just starting that. So what's the budget look like next year? What are the projections? How bad was this year's budget off?
Sure.
And obviously, there's no way you could have predicted it based on what we had, but how bad was it off, and how are you recovering from that?
So it was off. There's multiple parts of the budget, as you know. Some of the listeners may not know all the different, what I'll call pots of money. The general fund from ad valorem, are your property tax dollars, which fund a major portion of the budget. Those weren't off because those are based on pre-assessed property values from the beginning of the year. So that held steady. When you start talking about sales tax and tourism tax and gas tax, those three things, those were all off significantly. We are seeing a pretty quick rebound in our area on the sales tax, the gas tax, and the tourism tax now. But there was some significant dips. You can think when the country basically shut down in March or April, I believe our revenue projections on the tourism tax dropped to like 20% a month. So that's an 80% reduction over a couple of months, and it is rebounding, and it's actually exceeding some of the previous expectations already. So we've been in a very fortunate area to see some of that rebound. And also, it's interesting because I know there's people on both sides of the aisle. Well, we don't want that back yet because we're still worried about COVID. But one thing to note is St. Johns County, and I credit this to the citizens and people who take care of their health care and the system here, have done very, very well when you look at the statewide numbers. So it's a good thing that the economy is coming back and that the county has predominantly done very well as a whole related to the pandemic.
Well, and I was talking to, and it's just anecdotal information, you're always out, and I was at a restaurant on the beach today, Sunset Grill. I was talking to them. They had a better September 20 than they had September of 19.
That's right.
And that's great news for those restaurants and businesses, because they got hammered when we shut everything down. It was just a really difficult. So I was glad for that. I also have some information from its permit data. And I always get this. I'm in the Home Builders Association. So to give you some background, St. Johns County issued about 4,500 new single-family residences in 2018, about 4,100 in 2019. We're at 34, almost 3,500 through 9 months of this year. So we're going to beat last year's number, which is really remarkable. We got about 1,000, about 600 to go. And typically we're permitting somewhere between 400 and 500 units a month. So we should exceed that. That's been a real kind of a shining light in all of this stuff that's gone on, as our construction economy has been able to stay open and keep going, and that's been a big plus for us.
Well, as you know, St. Augustine was, and it's before my time here, it was discovered, and people are going to keep coming here. This has been probably 15 or 20 years, and those who are really, really smart and good at this knew that 25 years ago, and you see some of the bigger developments that have now come on board. When you start talking Nocatee and Silverleaf, they had the foresight to see down the road and into the future. But this is a testament to all those who have helped build St. Johns County. I mean, you've got the beach, you've got the intercoastal, you've got the river, we still have a lot of great land where people can hunt and fish and do the things that bring people here. But then you've got great homes, you've got good law enforcement, a safe community, a healthy community, great school district. So it's on the map, and people are not going to stop coming.
No, they're not. And I think we're in the middle of one of the biggest mass migrations in our lifetime. People are leaving the bigger cities. They're leaving areas where they either had a bad experience with the coronavirus, the lockdowns from the coronavirus, or violence from the summer from protesting or rioting, really not protesting, rioting. And I talked to a lot of realtors. We're down to a little bit over a 3-month supply of housing. Normally we're at 6 months. Talk to people in the building trades that say typically, I mean, the lumber prices are going through the roof right now. And there's a lot of builders that can't if you get a quote on Monday and you can't order your lumber till Tuesday or Wednesday, the price has gone up. No one's holding those numbers. And so that's been a very difficult, and that usually will put a damper on housing starts. Eventually that price hits a point where buyers say, we're not going to pay that extra 10% or 20% or 30% of that cost.
But we haven't seen that yet.
Not yet. And
what's your prediction? 2 years before we see it? 3?
I think a lot of it depends on the winter.
Okay.
So I think a lot of it depends on winter, and then I think a lot of it depends on how states that are in really serious lockdowns or severe lockdowns, how they react through the winter. Right. So if they continue to lock down and people can't earn a living and they're afraid to go to school or they have a lot of cases, you're going to continue to see people moving. As Ronald Reagan said, they're voting with their feet. They're going to go somewhere where they can have a better life.
Yeah.
And it's really, even inside the state of Florida, we talk to realtors, there's people leaving South Florida because those 3 states, Dade, Broward, and Palm Beach, were the worst hit from coronavirus through most of the lockdown. There's people leaving there. They're going to Lake City. Lake City's become a hot spot.
Really?
One realtor drove a client from South Florida to Lake City to look at one house and drive back in the same day because they didn't want to be around anybody. And so that's some of the stories that are going on from a real estate standpoint.
Right.
Where they're saying, look, we just want to get out. We want to get away from people. We want to have space. We've said on this show a lot, if you lived horizontally, you took a bigger risk and a lot more cases from coronavirus than if you lived vertically.
Right.
I'm sorry, horizontal. If you lived horizontally, you're better. If you live vertically, you're a lot more dangerous. So the bigger cities just took a big hit. Even looking at Houston compared to some of the other large cities, Houston doesn't have a lot of verticality. It's mostly office. It's not living. So they're so spread out, and I have a brother that lives there. They're working on, so they have one loop road when Houston was little. Then they built a second loop road, and now they're working on the third one. I think the diameter of it is like 300 miles.
That's unbelievable.
Oh, so that's just how far out Houston has grown. Now, they still got some cases, and they still had it bad. They still had a resurgent, kind of a second wave, but you're still looking at it not as bad as a New York City or a Chicago or even out in some of the bigger cities in California.
Well, you said it, and you add to that the civil unrest, the poor governance of some of these communities, especially large cities. So people leave high tax areas where they can get more property, and they don't want to be involved where there's an issue with public safety or people are talking about defunding law enforcement. That doesn't resonate. That doesn't resonate with most America. Put politics aside, left or right, for just a minute. Nobody wants to live in that environment. And so that brings people to areas like St. Johns County that's quickly growing. There's a great school system. There's a strong law enforcement. There's great homes. You got the city, the oldest city, a place where people have nostalgia towards. And it's, to others' detriment, it can be to our benefit, if we're careful with that. So it's, it's a benefit to us.
It is. Let me pay one bill. So
I
got to recognize one of our sponsors. So A to Z Roofing and Waterproofing. They offer free estimates. They've been serving St. Johns County for over 20 years. They offer painted metal roofs for saltwater area homes with warranties for up to 25 years. They have shingle roofs with warranties up to 50 years. They also install tile roofing, cedar shake shingles, designer roofing, and flat roof coverings. That you can go see their recent job photos and material descriptions at A to Z Roofing and Waterproofing.com. Give them a call at 904-669-8037, A to Z Roofing and Waterproofing. Chuck and the guys are great.
Add a plug to some of these local businesses that are supporting you, and in return you're supporting them. This is the perfect time to use local business. I mean, anytime you go through, and we're talking about a national struggle, but what better time to give back to the community if you're someone who has the funds to be able to expend to support some of these restaurants, businesses. That is good for the community as a whole. So,
in my industry, that's really important to me.
Absolutely.
So people look at me and say, well, I am not an Amazon guy.
Right.
I want to go buy from a brick and mortar store.
Right.
Because if there's not a brick and mortar store, there's a contractor that didn't build it, right? I mean, we're going out of this then huge distribution center, which is not going to be built by a small local contractor like me. So
Right.
you're constantly looking at keeping those people in business and employed. And, people make fun of me. Why do you go here and buy it? Well, if I don't go buy it there, right, I can't. And even banking, I'll go into the bank all the time. Well, you can do that online. Yeah, I know, but I want that branch there when I have a problem so I can walk in
That's
and
right.
I can talk to somebody that I know, as opposed to having to get online and try to deal with that. Case in point, and I like Florida Power and Light, and I think they've done a great job, but when they had local offices, you could walk in and get your problem solved.
That's right.
Now you call a call center and you start a process that sometimes goes really well, but sometimes it takes a lot longer than it used to when you could walk in and talk to a human being.
Absolutely.
And I think they're more efficient probably from an expense standpoint, but sometimes you suffer a little bit from a service standpoint.
Nothing better than face-to-face interaction.
Correct. When they don't, when you're trying to tell them, hey, there's a line down here, and the person has never been here, it's it's hard to explain that.
Think about social media. I mean, this is a little bit of a side rabbit, if you will, but people get on and say things on social media that they're not going to say if they're sitting here, at the table together. Now, some will, but most will not. And that's the same thing in business. If you've got somebody in a customer service on the line, unless they've been trained really, 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 really well in their environment and their culture, they're not going to have the same interaction if they were sitting across and saying, hey, how may I help you?
Yeah.
So
no, it's you've hit on that. I mean, that's people typing out stuff on social media. It's really like that one-liner.
mm-hmm.
It's really not about solving anything. It's about what's the insult I can get out.
That's right.
Can someone else give a better insult back? But it's never about solving a problem. And it's really easy to tear things down. I mean, use this analogy all the time. In construction, if you tell me to build a project, it might take me years to build the project between the design and the permitting and the funding and then the construction time. But if you tell me to tear it down, I can probably tear it down in less than a week.
That's right.
So it's the same way with social media. It's so much easier to tear things down than it is to actually contribute to building something.
That's right.
And that's our problem right now, is that so many people would rather just throw a hand grenade and then run. And it's an anonymous throw, right?
That's right.
It's no one knows who I am, and I don't live in that community. So I want to anonymously throw this hand grenade and then I'm going to run. It doesn't fix anything.
Never does.
It
Never will.
We had this conversation in a church class earlier this week. How do you like to communicate? And almost all of us it's much better face to face.
Yes, it is.
It's just a much better face to face than sending an email. In fact, I was dealing with a client issue the night of the first presidential election debate between Trump and Biden. And I'm listening to that as they're going back and forth, and I'm typing. And I looked down and I saw what I typed, and I went, I do not need to send that. I'm kind of caught up in the moment of the debate.
That's right.
And this is really not the time to send that email. So I just deleted it, made a couple phone calls the next morning. I was like, there's no way this is going to be good.
Well, the technology, it shouldn't replace the in-person. It should supplement it.
That's it.
So, we've got an opportunity. We've been able to do things. I know you guys in business and others, especially in local business, have found ways. And I can tell you in county government, we found ways to do things that we may not have otherwise have done them, but it doesn't mean that should replace necessarily the old way of doing things.
So we talked a little bit about budget and a little bit about tourism. Do you have any information on tourism numbers? Are we starting to bounce back? I know if you go downtown, St. Augustine usually is a little slow in September and October. 2 weeks ago, Darcy and I were driving through on a Saturday night, and the line outside one of the restaurants was farther back than I'd ever seen during 4th of July weekend. And I was like, wow, this is September.
I don't know where we stand as far as the numbers of people that are coming in, but I can tell you the revenues that are coming in are hitting pre-pandemic levels again and exceeding some of the revenue expectations. So we've seen a significant return in those tourism dollars. I don't know that and you'd have to ask some who are specifically in the business, but the revenues that this county receives, we've seen an uptick significantly since the beginning of the pandemic.
Bed tax coming back.
Mhm.
Good. That's because I know you guys use that to promote local tourism,
right.
and it also funds a lot of other projects that we do. So I'm glad.
And
to
that's
hear
what I
that.
reference when I
Yeah.
say tourism dollars.
Yeah.
I'm specifically referencing that bed tax.
Okay. One of the other, every department in the county had to relearn how to work. So is there any kind of shout outs that you would like to give to some of your departments? And I know they all worked really hard. I think the only one that's completely underperformed is the amphitheater. No fault of their own.
No
I'm
fault of
kidding.
Gabe's.
It's no fault. You know, believe me.
No shows.
we-
No shows.
I can walk to the amphitheater. So I miss the amphitheater not being open. I'll be glad when it's open and safe to go back again. But do you have any departments that you want to say, like, these guys just went above and beyond and came up, they problem solved better than I thought they possibly
Well,
could?
I'll tell you, and to your point, all of them, in my opinion, worked really hard to maintain some level of service operation for the community. But from an economic standpoint, I will say the building department, and I have a little bias here because the bias is, the building department is hand in hand with the local economy. As you know, it affects your business, and it doesn't just affect the builder or the developer. It affects the plumber, the electrician. It affects the hardware store, on and on and on. And they found a way to stay open when many other around the state, and I would assume around the country, but certainly around the state, were closing their building permit sitters during right at the height of this. So, they did really, really well. As you know, Howard White and Charles Crane, Bubba Crane, they worked hard with their team over there. And that affects the local economy. That keeps things somewhat going as other people are suffering. That helps to put some money back into the economy. So I look from a private sector standpoint, that's where I see a huge benefit to the community, where local government was able to, I hope, step in and support the local economy as well.
Well, and this is the first time in a crisis that construction wasn't executed the first week of the crisis.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, anytime there's generally something that goes wrong in the country, construction shuts down the next day. And this was the first time that didn't happen. I feel sorry for everybody's business that did have to shut down.
Absolutely.
Because I know after 32 years of doing this construction, what that feels like. I've been through some of those downturns. And I didn't realize how good we had it until about 2 or 3 weeks ago. I was on a conference call. We sell Butler Steel Buildings, and we're on a conference call with all of these builders from across the Southeast. And when we started talking, everybody had a shot at what was going on in their area. The same message out of Florida builders from South Florida and Central Florida and the Tampa area is that most of their building departments shut down.
Mm-hmm.
They weren't issuing permits. They weren't reviewing plans. They weren't receiving plans. They were done. And so when I got that off that conference call, I called Howard White and I thanked him. I mean, Howard's a good friend. He's done a great job as our head building official. But I said, I didn't realize what good service I was getting till I heard how bad it was everywhere else. I mean, I'm just so used to getting that kind of service out of Howard and his department. I'm like, I didn't realize that we were doing this so much differently than other places and working through that. And we tried to be very respectful as well. We had an architect out of South Florida, and they were going to mail us plans. And we said, we don't really want, this was in April.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
So no one knew the extent of coronavirus, how it could be transmitted. We were in that learning phase. And so I'm like, don't mail them to me. Just email them to me.
Mm-hmm.
I'll print the plans. I said, I'll take my plans that I printed over to the building because I know where my paper's been.
Right.
I know that I don't have to worry about that some guy sneezing on it in South Florida, and then I take it into the building department and I get those guys sick. And it was funny because we walked in, I said, normally there'd be a raised seal on. I said, these are all electronic. And they looked at it, I said, I could get you the plans out of South Florida. And they're like, no, we'll take these.
Right.
Everybody got, so you started doing things a little bit differently because you're worried about the staff that's in there.
Mm-hmm.
Can we email this to you? So it's an electronic record as opposed to being a hard paper copy. And there was a lot of times we could work around things. And my hat's off to those guys because they just went above and beyond.
And I'll tell you, the departments and the directors and even the staff at the county as a whole, not just the
Mm-hmm.
departments and managers and supervisors, employees were very motivated to come to work, to continue to work, and try to find ways to serve the community. I think a lot of times, and I can say this having been in both private and public, we think, well, it's the government, and they want to get off, they want to go home. And look, there's always some of that. But what I saw was
I have that in my business. Okay,
It happens everywhere.
so it happens everywhere.
But I saw a lot of people throughout the county who were
Yeah.
very committed to how can we stay open? What can we do? How can we contribute to the county when those in the private sector are suffering? Restaurants are closing, boutiques are closing, the cities are shutting down, things are closing. People are committed to say, what can we do? How can we help? Is it paving a road that is part of a pavement management program that may have been later in the year, but now there's nobody on the roads, so let's move that up to the top of the list to get it done. And there was tons of departments and people who are working hours and nights to try to make those things happen.
No, and it was great to see that, and I know a lot of those different people, and some of them have been with the county government a long time, right? They've worked their way up to where they are, and as we're sitting here talking, I really think, having gone through the financial collapse in 08, a lot of those employees saw how bad it was on their fellow employees and their fellow citizens, and I think that helped contribute to, hey, how are we going to survive this one?
I think you're right.
Because they saw how bad it was. I mean, they saw what the result was of a very difficult economic time that drug on for years. People were furloughed. People were, there's just all these different sacrifices that the county government made and all the citizens made and business owners made. And you're like, okay, we don't want to do that again. So how do we problem solve to make that work out?
That's right. Well, it's just like a hurricane. You see it the first time and you think, well, it didn't really affect me. And then all of a sudden you see it a second or third time and you realize this affects my entire community. And then back to your point of the 2008 crisis, I think people saw that and they were ready to step up and help this time for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that was and you mentioned the hurricanes. That's a whole nother. I mean, our community really pulled together through most of those hurricanes. And there were certain times that different parts of the county got hit. And there were parts of the county that really didn't get affected by the hurricane.
That's right.
I mean, if you weren't in Davis Shores or Volano Beach with Matthew, or Crescent Beach on the Intercoastal, and I know the river took a hit there too. You didn't get it. I mean, you were back and up and running if you were in the World Golf Village a couple days later.
That's right.
And you're not realizing this is how bad it is in other parts. And we had the same situation. There's times that something will happen somewhere else in the northern part of the county. And if you're in St. Augustine, you just don't realize how bad it is because you're just not driving through there and you're not looking at it.
Right.
So,
right.
And again, if you guys have any questions for Hunter, if you type them in, I'll be glad to ask them. Anything at all, we'll get there. Since you're 10 months on the job, 2 more months will get you a little bit closer to 2021.
That's right.
Any plans at the county for 2021 that you'd like to let us know about?
There's a lot of things that are upcoming. We're working on the board allocated last year funding for World Golf Village area library and park. So that should be coming on board at some point here within the next year. We're hoping that construction will start on that. There's still some talks ongoing with redoing a little bit of the county golf course. There's a number of things, but some of the plans.
Expanding to 36 holes? I'm just kidding. If Troy was here, he would throw something at me right now.
Yes, he would. I'm sure he'd have a lot of questions about
if
about
he's
what's going
listening
on.
into land, he's screaming somewhere.
A lot of exciting things, though, and
Yeah.
ultimately, right now, it's going to be the focus is on the recovery from COVID,
Yeah.
getting operations back to normal, supporting the community. The board just finished their budget. It's a $1 billion budget. And what I'll say about that is people think, oh, my goodness, a $1 billion budget. What does that mean? That does not mean that there's $1 billion in expenditures. So all of a sudden we're growing government. Those are grant funds. Those are carryover funds from previous years where dollars weren't spent that are going to go to do projects that didn't get done this year because of COVID. So your Board of County Commissioners has worked hard. As you know, there was a rollback of the millage. There was a reduction in fees throughout the county. So the board has worked very hard to remain fiscally responsible as we move forward.
All right. So one of the big discussions that always rolls through government and private sector, and you've been on both sides, is does growth pay for itself? So you've been on both sides of this. You're now on the county government side. Is the growth that we're seeing, is it catching up, and is it going to be able to pay for things that we'll need in the future? I mean, everybody points to, well, we have to take care of roads and we have to build new roads and we have road and all these, we've got to build fire stations. Even though we get the land, we still got to build them and we got to staff them. What are we seeing?
It's a very easy, but it's going to come off as a very political answer. And it depends on what the community wants. At the end of the day, that's what it comes on. We've got a fire master plan that's going to be coming back out, our fire comprehensive plan. Does the community want that? If the community wants fire stations within 5 miles of every location. If they want new parks and new libraries and more ball fields and things and stuff that are good for the community as a whole, no, it does not pay for itself. There has to be a way to find a way to do that long term. If they want new facilities, if you're okay with a little bit of a lesser product but still good government, you can do it. Pavement maintenance and taking care of what you have, you can maintain what you have on what we have. But if the community desires for a lot more, it does not pay for itself. And that's my opinion. 10 months on the job, somebody else may tell you something different. From what I've seen, I think it's, there's no way to do it.
Well, and it's a huge debate, right? And it depends on what side you're on, right? So, and I'm going to kind of get out. If you're a fiscal conservative, you always want to say, well, you guys have plenty of money, right? If you're somebody who is of a more liberal mindset, you're like, oh, the government needs more money and they have to do more things. I think you saw that between Mike Wanchek and a very conservative board. When as the board got more conservative, Wanchek still said, hey, we need, and the board's like, no, we don't. So I think there's always that push-pull. I'm glad to have that discussion. I don't want to see it all running in one direction, because if you just said, no, we don't need anything new,
right,
you're eventually going to run down your current services. You're going to run down your current parks. You're going to, the roads, all those things. And eventually that's going to make it worse. If you're constantly raising taxes to build new things, you're never getting innovative on how to do things for less money.
Well, and that's the age-old problem with government as well. The more you give it, the more it grows. So you got to have a board, because they set the policy and objective and ideas and agenda. You got to have a board that restrains some of that, because it will grow and people will want more. It's the nature of government. The more you get, the more you want. And so having a good check and balance and having fiscal conservatives that are up there voting on stuff and representing their constituency is a good balance to have.
Well, and it's always, like I said, it's always that kind of push-pull between the two. And if you shift too far one way or the other, you kind of create, I think, worse problems.
Right.
And it is good to have those kind of discussions. What do you want the community to look like? And I think our citizens get a lot of opportunity to have input in that. I think our community is going to change pretty drastically. I mean, we brought, what are we, close to 300,000?
We're getting really close. I don't know the census numbers are going to be, but
Yeah.
somewhere, I think the projection was about 270.
Yeah.
I think we're going to be at 300 when we see the census numbers come in. There's somebody else could tell you though better.
And that's incredible, because I went back and looked. I did a history of St. Johns County compared to our company and how big the county was population-wise when my grandfather started the business. And I think there was probably about 20,000 people in the county at 66 years ago. And now, we're close to 300,000. I remember when I came back 32 years ago, I think it was 70,000 people in the county.
Right.
So you just look at that growth and you look at where we're going. And obviously we have a great thing. You mentioned all those things. People are going to continue to come and visit that.
And commercial growth helps as well. The more commercial there is, that's more tax dollars that come to the county as well. So as you see some of these commercial things come online, that is helpful. That will help pay for growth. But up front, it's difficult because, as you know, you're putting in big roads and there's infrastructure and utilities and all these things that have to go in. And again, it's really just what the community wants. I will tell you, I think the board did a great job this year. As you know, I'll repeat it again, they rolled back the millage on, and some of that is because there's exploding growth in St. Johns County. So does it work this year? Absolutely. Does it work 5 years from now? Time will tell.
Well, and that was always my kind of, when I had discussions with people that wanted to raise taxes 4 and 5 years ago, I'm like, well, it's going to catch up. You're still coming out of a downturn.
That's right.
And I can't do this with my hands, and I don't have a whiteboard that I can hold up. But one of our builders did a study of what the average number of permits would have been, okay, had we not had 2009, 10, 11, 12, 13, right? It didn't really start taking off till about 14 or 15. We are years behind.
Right.
Not months. We're years behind in building housing units. So had we had just a straight graph, a straight level, no ups and downs in the economy, we just build as we go along, we would have been years ahead. So when we say there's 5,000 housing units or 10,000 units a year, I mean, we're probably 30,000 units behind where we should be. Now that's scary for me because I'm one of these guys. I'm like, that's another, 30,000. You're talking about 60 or 70,000 people moving in the county. But that's what the 2008 financial collapse did to building in the county. I mean, it suppressed that growth for that long. And it's not just here, it's across the country.
So I'll kick it back to you. Does growth pay for itself?
Where I think it has, and this is a St. Augustine native view
Mm-hmm.
of what we have in St. Augustine
Agreed.
versus what you
Nocatee.
have in the northern part of the county. So impact fees have paid for roads. They've paid for new parks. You've got schools. So if you live in the northern part of the county, everything you have is pretty new. If you're going to St. Augustine High, if you're going to Hartley Elementary, if you're going to Murray Middle School, those are much older things, right? Treaty Park was a huge investment
Mhm.
in St. Johns County. It's probably the oldest park that you have now that's active and used on a regular basis when you look at all the parks. I'll drive through the northern part of the county and go, wow, that's really nice.
Yeah, that's right.
And so it's a very, and there's a lot of residents in the northern part of the county that have no idea what West Augustine looks like.
Well, and that's why I say it depends on what the overall county as a whole wants. So
Mhm.
there are times it does pay for itself, absolutely. And then if there's an expansion of things that people want, it doesn't pay for itself. So
Yeah.
it's, but it's year by year, evaluating that.
And you've got Suzanne, one of our listeners. Her comment was, I lived in St. Johns County for 23 years. From the very beginning, I was extremely impressed with our St. Johns County employees across the board in all the departments through the years, even with the tremendous growth. So,
Thank you for
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
They're long before me, so I'm a very blessed inheritance of so many of that staff.
well, and that's, that's why I came back. I mean, I left and went to college, and I had no doubt that I was coming back to St. Augustine. I just loved living here. I mean, I
Mhm.
just couldn't wait to get back and be a part of the community and do that. In fact, I need to talk about somebody else who's part of the community, and you know them well. Solomon Services, the premier place for personal training in St. Augustine. They have one-on-one youth and adult personal training. They have small group strength and fitness development classes, athletic development for team and individual sports. They have speed and agility development, sports injury-related training if you're recovering from an injury. They have a brand new state-of-the-art indoor and outdoor facility with turf areas. They have all their coaches are certified through the National Strength and Conditioning Association. The gym sanitation and client safety is a top priority at Solomon Services. Call and make an appointment, 904-461-9945, or visit their website, solomonservices.com, and sign up today. If you're trying to get rid of your COVID-19 weight, this is the place to go.
Do you have any COVID-19 weight, Mike?
Well, I had some this week, and that's a story I'm still sensitive about. So, yeah, we had a weigh-in this week. It didn't go well. Last Tuesday? No, it was this Tuesday. Yeah, but I've already met my goal that I was supposed to lose. So
Okay.
yeah, it was one of those you looked at the weight and you went, how did that happen this week?
So you're back to pre-COVID
I'm,
numbers.
no, I'm not. I'm pretty close.
Okay.
I'm pretty close. And my wife had a birthday last week, and so we had a lot of pizza and a lot of cake. And I looked at her. I said, "Look, what'd you do this to me for?" It's really not her fault. It's mine. I'm the one that ate the food. But yeah. So it's kind of interesting. So, let's see. Dan Hilbert, hard-hitting question for Hunter. Who has the better beard, Assistant County Administrator Brad or Troy Blevins?
Oh, that's a tough question. That's a good one, Dan. Spoken from a beard man himself.
Dan's got a pretty
Dan's
good
got a
beard.
pretty nice-
Dan's got a nice, yeah, I know.
Like standing up.
What do you got, Blake?
He's getting started.
I definitely say I have the better beard than both of them.
You have a better beard you have a younger beard than both of them.
I'll punt to Dan and say Dan's beard is the best.
See,
There
we got
go.
Blake's beard.
Nice. Blake.
So, yeah, I think Dan, if he put himself in the competition, is probably going to be,
he's up there.
he's up there. He's got a good beard. And
Brad's is seasoned. Brad's got the seasoned beard though.
is it Brad? Is you type Brad Bradley?
Brad Bradley. Bradley J. Bradley's his name, but he goes by
Okay.
Brad.
All right, and I think Troy's got the best Walking Dead beard.
Absolutely.
So
That makes perfect
if
sense.
you
though.
want a Walking Dead beard, it is Troy Blevins. If
Is
you're
that
like,
the beard you want to say that you have though? Is the Walking Dead beard?
well, if you have a Walking Dead beard, it means you survived most of the apocalypse long
true.
enough to grow a beard. So I mean, that's a pretty good thing in the Walking Dead world. You're like, okay, I lived long enough to grow the beard, right? So there's a lot of people didn't make it that long. So I gotta say, I think that's a
impressive.
pretty good thing. So, yeah. So we talked about that. A lot of local stuff. Nationally, we got about 15 minutes left,
Okay.
and I know you're a big political guy. Where do you see the national election right now? If you had to make a prediction between Trump, Biden, what do you see going on?
Now, my prediction is not based on my personal desire.
Okay.
If the election were held today,
Yep.
I think that Biden would win if it
Okay.
were held today.
Yep.
Again, not necessarily not what I would be rooting for. I've been elected in St. John's before, so without a doubt, everybody can say Hunter's a conservative Republican.
Yeah.
No question there. I would be voting for Trump. But I will say this: if it were held today, I think Trump makes it difficult on himself. I think he's had some opportunities.
Yeah.
Now, look, as you know, and I know you all discuss this, and politicos discuss it. Does he get an unfair hand from the media? Of course he does. But I'm not sure that he helps himself. I watched the debate the other night, both the Biden-Trump debate and the Pence-Harris debate, and I know that so many people like Trump because he fights back. I'm a person. I sat there and I watched Pence, and I was like, if you could blend what Trump is with how Pence presents himself,
Yeah.
that's a large portion, I think, of what America's looking for right now.
But see, I hear that. But yesterday we had comments because we talked about the debate, and Troy and I were talking, and one of the things that came out of that is Troy said, God, it was so boring. And I said, that's just so not fair. A week ago, you're saying it was too boisterous, it was too loud, people were too rude, but it was more entertaining.
Right.
Right. And then this week you get calmer, people answering questions. Yes, they went a little long, and you're like, oh, this is boring. So you really can't win, if you're watching a debate. My history.
If it were held today, if it were held
I'm
today?
gonna tell you. So I've been a Trump guy.
Mm-hmm.
So in 2015, as we were looking, I liked Cruz. I thought Ben Carson is a brilliant man. Unfortunately, he's too much Pence, right?
Right.
Mike Pence looks like a really happy-go-lucky guy next to Ben Carson. Okay,
Right.
and Ben Carson is brilliant. I've read his books. I love him, but he just didn't have the charisma to get there.
Sure.
And I liked Cruz early on, but when I watched Trump kind of struggle early and when he launched his campaign, and he didn't back down, I said, this is a different guy. This is a guy that is different than anything we've seen.
Mm-hmm.
And the one thing Republicans have always struggled at is not backing down.
It's true.
And Democrats will say, oh, no, Republicans are mean and they're cruel. But typically Republicans have backed down and caved and compromised, and Democrats haven't. Now,
Absolutely.
Obviously, I'll have Democrats that listen to this and say, oh, that's not true. But that's the perception from a Republican and a lifelong Republican. And again, I registered as a Republican when St. Johns County was all Democrat, right?
Right.
In 84, which people think is crazy today when you tell that story. But so I got on the Trump train or bandwagon early on, and I said in August of 15, it's over. I said all the rest of the Republicans can go home and Hillary can go home. Trump's going to win.
Okay.
So I've been pulling for Trump since then, and I've watched all of this stuff. And the one time that I really had a tough moment was in November, late October, early November of 2016.
Okay.
So I was on a job site with a friend of mine who is very liberal, and I had watched all of the Sunday morning shows the day before, right? So this is probably a week out from the election, and it was doom and gloom. It was Trump is going to get beat worse than Walter Mondale, right? It is just Trump might not get a vote anywhere, right? He's never going to get an electoral college vote. This is going to be a clean. Hillary Clinton is going to have a landslide, and she's going to have a mandate, and I get on that job site, and my friend was so convinced that Hillary's going to win, and there's 10 people standing around us having this discussion. So there's no place to back up politically, right? You're either in or you're out.
Right.
You either fold and admit that, yeah, my guy might lose, or you're in. So this friend of mine wanted to bet his house and all the money in the bank account that Hillary was going to win. And I looked at him, I said, look, I really like you. You're good friends, and I love your wife. I think more highly of your wife than I think of you. She's a very nice person. I'm not going to take her home in her retirement. So let's just bet lunch, which seemed like the big backup for me, right? You know,
Right.
But I said, I'll bet you lunch. Let's bet. So, of course, the day after Trump won, I got a 5:30 text. Thank God. I didn't take your bet. Right? I said, I would never take your house. And we went to lunch and had a great conversation. But that was kind of that moment. You're like, oh, my God, am I actually going to stand up and do this?
So you're in the same position. Not only do you say you support him,
Yes.
because supporting and who you think is going to win, two different things, right?
Yes.
So you're saying you not only supported him and thought he was going to win in 16, you're still there. You support him today, and you still think he's going to pull this out
Yeah,
in 20.
I do. And where I was wrong, and I'll admit that I was wrong,
Sure.
I thought that he would win the popular vote as well. I
Okay.
didn't see that split, so I was wrong there. I actually got a little cocky towards the end, and I thought he would carry New York, which I lost the lunch bet to Troy. So I haven't been 100% right on this. But I look at the Electoral College and where it's at now, and we've talked about this several times on the show. There was a 4 to 8% undercount of Trump voters in swing states last time. I believe that still exists today. I've talked to somebody this week that is a huge Trump supporter. They've been interviewed or polled 5 times. All 5 times, even though they are 100% voting for Trump, they have told the pollster, we love Biden. We are enthusiastically supporting Biden. And they take that. So I think pollsters are still having a hard time reaching that Trump crowd, because if you're like me, you don't trust the pollster.
That's right.
You don't trust them. You feel like they're part of the establishment.
Right.
They're really not polling. They're trying to drive an outcome. And so I think there's still probably a 4 to 6 or 8% of that Trump vote. There's
so
a
the silent majority still reigns in
Yeah.
battleground states.
It does, and it's the battleground states that what's really been added on top of that is lockdowns.
Mm-hmm.
So you look at the lockdowns in Pennsylvania, you look at the lockdown in Michigan, and how much of an impact does that have? And Troy and I have talked about which states can swing. I mean, he thinks that Pennsylvania and Wisconsin and Michigan can swing back to
Which
Biden,
is possible.
Which is
As
possible.
we talked about earlier,
Yeah.
currently the polls are trending in Biden's direction on those.
Oh, Biden's got this thing locked up if you're polling, right? I
Mhm.
mean, if you're looking at and you still have another 3 weeks of coordinated attacks against Trump from the Atlantic and the New York Times and CNN and MSNBC News. There's stuff that they're waiting to drop out. I think it was about a year ago that the Billy Bush Access Hollywood tape hit,
Yes.
right? So, and that was the end of Trump, right? That he was done and he was finished.
That was 4 years ago.
It was 4 years ago. I'm sorry,
right,
4
yeah.
years ago. And so we're right around that same time frame. So what's going to hit? What are they going to unleash? So
Well, I'm not sure you can, to be frank, I'm not sure you can unleash much more. They've dug up everything in his past.
I know.
They've got taxes now that they're talking about. They're blaming Trump. They're blaming Trump for the 200,000 lives that have been tragically lost due to this, as opposed to recognizing that it's a national problem, that under any presidency their lives would have been lost. You cannot quantify what the difference would have been. The Surgeon General in the beginning, I think if you remember, said masks are this is Trump's Surgeon General. The communication is difficult on this.
Mm-hmm.
The masks are not effective, and later came out and said we need to wear masks. Everybody's all over the place. I'm not sure what else you can do to the man with 3.5 weeks to go.
Well, and I think that, and I've joked about this, if you're a true Trump supporter, because of all of this stuff that is
Just turn it
thrown
off.
at him, you basically have been vaccinated against it. We're
Mhm.
all immune
That's right.
to use it. It doesn't matter what they say about Trump over the next year. If you're a true Trump, you're going to vote for him.
So if you're the undecided, because there are those of us who we know who we're voting for.
Yeah.
We're on the Trump side. We're
Mhm.
not going anywhere. For some of us,
Yeah.
it's party over person, and we're stick with the platform of the party.
Yeah.
But support Trump. There's nothing that could happen short of something major criminally, but it wouldn't change what party I voted for in the national election. There's a lot of people like that. So who does it change? The undecided. What are they looking for? The 2 to 3% in these battleground states that haven't made up their mind.
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know how you can be undecided right now. I mean, it's
I agree.
a fairly clear thing. And, Troy and I'll have these discussions. I mean, Trump built the wall.
Mhm.
He got us out of the Paris Climate Accord. He was tougher on Iran and
Three
North Korea.
evangelicals, 2
Yeah.
Supreme Court justices with another third
Third
one possibly on
third
the way.
one on the way.
That's right.
So he's delivered more than any other politician. And he's running against a guy that has been in politics for 47 years who says, I can fix it now. Now?
Right.
I mean, and I hate to say this, but if you had let Trump get into this 47 years ago, Trump would have fixed a lot of this stuff 47 years ago. We would have different problems today. We would still have problems,
Right.
but they would be different problems. You don't hear a single thing about the border. Well, why don't you hear about the border? Because what Trump implemented down there is working.
Mhm.
If it wasn't working, the left would have it on the news all day long. The fact that you don't hear a thing about immigration, we've had 2 debates, not one question about immigration. Not one.
That's a good point.
So I look at what Trump has delivered, and I'm fine with that. Do I think he's chaotic at times? Yes. Now, part of that is me looking at somebody who I know is a New York Yankee,
Mhm.
and I'm a Southerner.
Right.
And I've dealt with New York Yankees moving down here my whole life. I get the attitude. I get that that's what I got to work through, and I'm okay with that. And I'm not insulting. Listen, when we go up, as a Southerner, when I go up north, I know I talk slower and I know I might not. I get that. It's okay. That's just kind of where everybody has a different way that they act when they were raised in different parts of the country.
That's
no
right.
big deal. It's just the way we are. But so you're kind of used to that with Trump. I think some people wish he was a little easier, but I don't know that he would have survived the media onslaught.
That's me. I'm in that camp. I think he makes it difficult on himself. But I've heard from many people, many friends on both sides of the aisle on this issue, and they say, and to your point, could he have even withstood it if he had been more Pence-esque, if you will? I look at Pence and I think, man, he's so a traditional statesman.
Yep.
But a lot of people are of the belief if he would not have been able to maintain or do some of the things he's done if he took a more traditional approach.
No, he wouldn't. And I I told you I'd give you some stats.
Mm-hmm.
So here's one out of Pennsylvania, right? So Pennsylvania in the third quarter of this year set a record number of firearm background checks. Okay. So for the third quarter in Pennsylvania, just the state of Pennsylvania, 406,000 background checks in 90 days for new weapons.
Okay.
Right. The year before was half of that. Right. The last time it was anywhere near that number was the first quarter of 2013, which would have been after Obama was elected in November of 2012. Mm-hmm. All right. So you saw a push. This is across all these battleground states. You have the Republicans, other than Arizona, lead in new voter registration in all the swing states. In Florida, it was 192,000 plus for Republicans. Now, there might have been a push the last week for Democrats, and I haven't seen a number since they shut it off, which was supposed to be the 5th, what I think ended up being the 6th or the 7th.
I think you're right.
Because of a computer problem, which Vicki could tell us all about when Troy has her on in a week or so. But I just, when I look at some of those trend lines, I look at, I just look at stuff. This was completely anecdotal. We talked about it before. I went and downloaded the Trump campaign app on my Android. 500,000 downloads. It'll tell you how many downloads there are. Well, curiosity got me. I looked up the Biden app. How many people do you think have downloaded the Biden app on an Android platform?
Because you're asking the question, I'll say 275,000.
10,000.
Really?
So when I look at that kind of stuff.
Hold on, Mike. I will say something like that.
Yes.
I have an Android myself, and definitely say the Google Play Store, it just generalizes. So it's basically they only show like 1K plus, 10K plus. Like they don't show like the actual number of downloads. So
but it hasn't made it to the 100K plus number.
But it hasn't made it to the 100,000.
Okay.
So, but you are right.
That's right.
And I did try to go on my iPad and try to look up the same thing, and it wouldn't give me the information. Because part of me, you start to look at it and go, well, is that just because Biden's supporters are all on an iPhone platform, right? They just don't use Samsung as much as Trump. I don't know.
Or does Joe Biden or does Joe Biden focus on like other social medias instead of just an app?
Correct.
Yep.
Correct. And the other, I'm always looking for new sources of information. Instagram has become a big source of information. The stuff that I'm seeing on Instagram, I'm not seeing on the national news. It is incredibly pro-Trump. And I can get on some pro-Biden feeds as well. You can kind of work your way through that if you select certain stuff. I'm just seeing a lot of parades. I'm seeing a lot of people, the boat parades. You look at this stuff. Biden will go somewhere and he'll have 10 people in his audience. There'll be hundreds of Trump supporters lined up to greet him as he gets to the venue. These are people that are taking time out of their day to annoy a man who's running for president, and they have 30 seconds to do it, and they'll stand in line for hours.
So do you fear what we saw in 2016 is what we'll call the anti-Hillary vote? Because there was a big pro-Trump vote, but there was also a large, and I think you would acknowledge, a large anti-Hillary vote.
Yes.
Do we see the reverse of that this year where there is, because we become so polarized, it is so anti-Trump that it hurts him?
So the most liberal part of our county is the city.
Correct.
Right. So if you drive around the city, you will see more Biden signs in the city of St. Augustine than you will see in the rest of the county.
That's right.
That's
100% accurate.
I drive all around the county, and if you're outside the city, you're out by the river, you're out at some of these newer developments in the northern end, a Biden sign is a unicorn. right?
Right.
You would think the entire county is related to Trump, right? It's that kind of different. On the island, it's a very different. It's probably sign wise, you probably see a few more signs that are Biden signs than Trump signs. But this time around, I think Democrats are not afraid to say, "Hey, I'm going to vote for Hillary." I think that they didn't like Hillary, but they weren't going to put. You didn't see any Hillary signs, none.
That's right.
Now I'm about to take a trip next week. I'm gonna go up into North Carolina. I'm going to Virginia. Part of it is a vacation with my wife, but part of it I'll be doing research the whole time I'm driving and seeing what do those rural areas look like in some of these places, and what do the signs look like? What's the kind of count? I think every urban area is going to go heavily for Biden.
Okay.
Right? If you look at the red-blue map by counties at the end of these elections, you know where every major city is. It's the blue dot.
That's right.
It's the blue dot on the map in Nebraska. It's the blue dot on the map in Montana. It's the blue dot on the map in Wyoming. You know where the cities are. Counties are all going to be red. So the question is, are you going to have a lot of red turnout? Scott Adams, who is a creator of Dilbert, he's got a blog. It's a great blog, and I've been encouraging people to listen to it for 4 years. He's not political left or right. He's more of a persuasion guy, and he looks at trends and are things honest or not. And he'll call out both sides for dishonest campaigning or ads or things that aren't helpful. He said months ago that for Democrats, they're not hugely excited about Biden, but they're going to vote for Biden, right? Nobody's a huge Biden guy. There's not a lot of enthusiasm for him.
Sure.
He finished 5th in New Hampshire. There's not a lot of enthusiasm for Joe Biden, right? There's some hatred for Donald Trump, and that's going to carry some votes as well. But for Republicans and Trump supporters, this is an extinction event.
It is.
If we lose, and you lose the House and the Senate, we could be looking at a packed
fundamental makeover of the United States.
2 new states, which forever make the Senate harder for us to deal with. The filibuster done away with in the Senate.
That's right.
Okay, the Electoral College may be gone. So, yes, Republicans are going to go vote, and they're going to go vote in record numbers because they understand if they lose, and if they lose to what's on the other side, we will have a very difficult time having the same republic that we have now.
Totally agree.
So I think for us, it's a different. Now you'll have probably more Republicans hold their nose and vote for Trump.
Sure.
Because of that, they'll go, look. In my mind, if the Democrats had truly put up a moderate, right? If they put up somebody in Andrew Yang, even Pete Buttigieg to a certain degree, if they'd put up a Tulsi Gabbard, right, which they couldn't stomach because they couldn't handle her, you would have had a lot more moderate voters or middle of the road voters look at that. But the other side is you got a guy that you have to question, can he do the job?
That's right.
I've joked on this show. Trump said it today. If Biden is elected, he won't be president for 90 days, right? Mm-hmm. So I said if I was the guy in the White House in charge of ordering stationery for the president, I would only order a 90-day supply at any given time if Joe Biden was the president.
Okay.
Right? I'm not. Hey, I'm gonna go order 4 years of supplies that say Joe Biden president. I'm gonna get 90 days worth.
Right.
Right. And Trump kind of said that today. The other joke that's been going around is that Nancy Pelosi's trying to figure out how to use the 25th Amendment.
I saw that.
Not to get rid of Trump, but to get rid of Biden after he's elected. Okay? And you look, and I thought that this morning. I wrote it down at 8 o'clock, and damn it, Rush talked about it today at like 1. I'm like, you're killing me, Rush. You're killing me.
He beat you to it.
Well, I'm trying to figure out where. I started looking at my office for the camera over my desk because I wrote it down at 8 o'clock, and I thought, darn it. But yeah, there's some jokes out there that this 25th Amendment and Nancy Pelosi has nothing to do with Trump. It's all about Biden.
Well, and they're gonna push, and as you've seen when he's asked the questions about packing the Supreme Court, he won't answer it. Now here's the question: Is he gonna do it, or is he? And I'm not suggesting that he's not going to, but the party's gonna pull him so far to the left, he's gonna have no choice but to do it.
Well, let's not ask if he's going to do it based on our 90-day subsidy. Will she do it? Yes.
Yes, she will.
I have no doubt that she's going to. And, I don't see that not happening. I see so I think it's important to hold the Senate. I still think we have a shot back at the House because I think a lot of those moderate Democrats that ran in Trump swing districts, I went and looked at a lot of their websites in 2018. You could not tell that they were Democrats.
Well, I'll tell you, kind of just changing just a little bit on that. This is why Americans should know history. This is why it's so critical to recognize the genius of the founding fathers in creating the three systems of government, because three co-equal branches of government, because you can shake it, you can mess with it, you can do a lot of things, and those three cords that are intertwined are very difficult to tear apart. I'll make the argument. I had a discussion with a good friend who's a Politico, if you will, the other day, and said, look, we always bounce back. We always bounce back. And I told him, I made the argument, if Republicans lose the Senate and they lose the House, which we've already lost the House, and lose the presidency, and there's no balance, I'll tell you, I would give up control of one of them if we were able to keep control of one of them. Now, I'm not saying that's what I want, but we're at because of the polarization of politics in America, we're at no greater chance in our history to lose our republic. And that's what I think. I think that's what a lot of Americans like myself fear, is what's going to happen if one party, specifically, in my opinion, the Democratic Party at the national level, is in control. They're going to rewrite the Constitution, the history, and the fabric of this country.
They don't want 2016 to happen again.
That's right.
So they will take the steps necessary to stop that.
That's right.
We are past our time. This is probably one of the longest shows we've done. And we could probably go for another 30 minutes easily. Hunter, you're always welcome here. You've done a great job through a very difficult time in our county.
Thank you.
Those of you that have watched today, share the show, download the app. We have no idea how much longer we might be on Facebook. So make sure you have the 904 Now app. Pete's going to be running his football game tonight, the St. Augustine game. Watch that if you get a chance. It's a great game. This is Blake, you got anything before we go?
I got nothing. We're over time right now.
All right. This is Uncommon Ground with Mike Davis, Troy Blevins, our guest, Hunter
Thank you for having me.
Conrad. I almost said Hunter Biden. That would have been good. Oh, that would have been bad. Hunter Conrad, our county administrator. I want to thank all of our callers, listeners, everybody that's commented online. You guys are awesome this week. Thank you so much for all the support. Especially thanks for all of our sponsors. It's Uncommon Ground with Mike and Troy, and we'll be right back next week.